Hi, I'm Thomas Bowles, Prince William County Agricultural Extension Agent. Welcome to our video.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's 11 o'clock, so we're going to get started. Today's presentation is on weeds that are friendly to bees. Our presenter is Natalie Walker, who is the environmental educator here at VCE-Prince William. And Natalie, whenever you're ready, go ahead and take it away.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining me on this presentation this morning. The title of my presentation is called These Weeds Are the Bees' Knees and Other Pollinators. So what is a weed exactly? There's actually a number of definitions on weeds and weediness, and it really depends upon how the human feels about said weeds. There's also a spectrum of what we humans consider weeds and what we're willing to tolerate or even value in our landscapes. So when it comes to weeds, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So a weed to one person can be another person's wildflower. And when I was doing my research on this presentation, a couple of definitions I found was number one, a weed can be any plant that is out of place, growing where it doesn't belong ecologically speaking, or where it is not wanted in landscaping. And another article described weeds as plants which thrive in landscapes disturbed by humans. Weeds are opportunists that will fill an ecological niche left open by disturbance. And an example of this is anytime we cut or burn existing vegetation, create roads or railways, abandon a field, or turn the soil, we are creating disturbed landscapes. So some definitions of a weed focus especially on weeds as plants that actually follow humans around. We may not want them around, but it is our human activity that creates habitats in which they flourish. I'm currently reading a book by Nancy Lawson called Humane Gardener, and she writes in her blog that unfortunately any weed species that gets in the way are treated like pimples on the face of a 15-year-old, zapped with chemicals or popped out of the smooth green mirage. So there are pros and cons to having weeds in the lawn. Some of the pros is that if we can tolerate some weeds, it actually helps to reduce the tendency to overmanage the landscape. We want to focus on a healthy environment and not a perfect landscape and monoculture. And remember that the imperfect lawn is the perfect lawn. While flowering lawn weeds are often seen as a nuisance, they actually have benefits to lawns in addition to bees and other pollinators. Weeds may be better adapted than turf grass to difficult site conditions such as drought, compacted soil, flooding, shade, and low nutrient availability. And when weedy species move into a new disturbed landscape, they can hold the soil in place, preventing further erosion. Some of the cons of having weeds in the lawn, many are aggressive, non-native, and prone to being invasive and cultivated in natural areas. Monoculture if the weed takes over. So although the weeds I will be discussing are beneficial, I'm not saying or recommending to let these weeds take over your whole entire lawn. We definitely want to have a diversity of plants and not a monoculture. And many of the most common weeds, such as dandelion and white clover, they're also disliked by homeowners. And with this can cause a bad reputation, creating social pressures to remove weeds, even if the lawn manager is tolerant of diverse lawns and realizes how plant diversity benefits pollinators. So with traditional lawn care management, it can be high maintenance with chemical inputs of fertilizers and pesticides, along with physical inputs of mowing, reseeding, weeding, and aerating every year. Traditional lawns may be aesthetically pleasing to some, but they have very little, if nothing, to offer pollinators and other beneficial organisms. So you might want to consider letting your lawn be. So a flowering lawn differs from a traditional lawn in that it has flowering plants as well as turf grasses. So the picture on the right, the top, there's a traditional lawn, and then below that is a flowering lawn with some white clover spread throughout. Whether introduced or native, many weeds actually provide pollen, nectar, or both to foraging bees throughout the year. And just two important things to remember, bees and other pollinators need a variety of food sources, and the best lawns have many kinds of flowers, hopefully with a range of bloom times, so spring, summer, winter, and fall. And if you're looking to promote pollinator health in your lawn or garden, you want to plant a diversity of native flowers that produce high quality nectar and pollen consistently. And the picture below that's just an example of a diversity of native plants in this homeowner's property. So the first weed we'll talk about is ground ivy, also known as creeping Charlie. It's native to the British Isles. It is in the mint family, so if the leaves are damaged, it can emit a mint-like odor. It's an early spring bloomer from April to May. It is considered by many to be a nuisance weed in lawns. And ground ivy can be confused with wild violet. However, ground ivy has kidney-shaped to rounded leaves, while wild violet has heart-shaped leaves with a pointed tip. And creeping Charlie draws a lot of insect visitors, including bees. Sweat bees, bumblebees, and honeybees are among its most popular insect visitors. The left photo is a bumblebee foraging on creeping Charlie, and the right photo is a blue orchard bee visiting a creeping Charlie. And they also are frequent visitors of wild violet. And they're really pretty too. Next, we'll talk about wild violets. There's 500 species worldwide, but 30 species are native to our region. They come in a variety of flower colors, leaf shapes, and forms. They can form a lovely ground cover under shrubs and perennials. This weed is desirable perennial plant by some and regarded as a weed by others. And it provides nectar for bees. And it's the host plant for several fritillary butterflies, and ants spread their seeds. So on the left, that's the common blue violet. And the right photo is the great spangled fritillary butterfly, which uses violets as a larval food source. White clover. White clover wasn't considered a weed in lawn grass until about 60 years ago, and it used to actually be part of the mix of seeds sold for establishing lawns. While white clover isn't native, it is highly attractive to several bee species, including honeybees and bumblebees. And I just think the photos are beautiful with the mixture of white clover and lawn. And another really cool thing about white clover, it's a member of the legume family, and it can fix nitrogen, improve overall health of the lawn, and reduce the need for fertilizing. So a study showed that white clover, it increases available nitrogen in the soil. So the soil bacteria that live in the nodules on the clover roots, it turns atmospheric nitrogen into plant available nitrogen, which is really awesome. And the picture on the right, it's attractive to several bee species, including bumblebees and honeybees. And I believe that's a bumblebee on the white clover flower. Dandelion was introduced to North America from Europe. Dandelions are a favorite source of nectar for many types of pollinators, including bumblebees, solitary bees, honeybees, beetles, and hoverflies. And dandelions provide a nectar source for many types of pollinators in early spring when food is scarce. And several birds eat dandelion flowers and the seeds. The hummingbirds use the seeds as construction material for their nests. And dandelions tend to bloom on a consistent basis, and they can provide at least some sustenance to pollinators until other plants begin to bloom. And the left photo, the dandelion's highly attractive to pollinating insects like the hoverflies, And then on the right photo is another picture showing hoverflies visiting dandelion. I think dandelions are really pretty too. Next, we'll talk about purple dead nettle and henbid. They're both native to Eurasia. They are members of the mint family that appear in the lawn in early spring. They definitely stand out because of the purple flowers against the green turf grass. They're both utilized as a food source by pollinators in early spring. The flowers of henbid provide a pollen and nectar source for long-tongued bees such as honeybees and bumblebees in March and April. And the nectar of purple dead nettle is attractive to bumblebees, honeybees, and digger bees, which are a group of large bees that nest in the ground. So the photo on the left, that's purple dead nettle, and then the photo on the right, that's henbid. Common chickweed. It's an herb native to Europe. It does serve as a host plant for the larvae of the venerable dart and chickweed geometer moths. The flowers do provide nectar for elfin butterflies, syrphid flies, and other beneficial insects. And the cottontail rabbit, groundhog, and white-tailed deer can eat the foliage, flowers, and seeds, but they are a minor source for those mammals. Everyone's favorite, hairy bittercress. It's native to Europe and Asia. It's actually a food source for the spring azure. Bumblebees are attracted to hairy bittercress for its nectar and pollen. And the weed attracts bees in the spring when other flowers are sparse. And the photo on the right, you can see a tiny little spider living on the seed pod, which I thought was really cute. Thistles. I'm just going to talk about two that are native to Prince William County. That's pasture thistle and field thistle. They have a lot of pollinators, but the most important of these include bumblebees, digger bees, leaf-cutting bees, and butterflies. Among the butterflies are monarchs, fritillaries, painted ladies, swallowtails, and sulfurs. And sphinx moths and bee flies also visit the flowers for nectar. Eastern goldfinch eats the seeds and uses the tufts of hair as lining material in its nest, and the ruby-throated hummingbird has also been known to visit the flowers of thistles for nectar. And just something I wanted to note, Canada thistle and bull thistle, they are non-native and invasive and considered noxious weeds, and a noxious weed in some states. So on the left, there's pasture thistle, and then on the right photo, that's a monarch and silver spotted skipper on a field thistle. Nimblewill. So once I type in nimblewill in my web search, the first articles that came up are how to kill it and what herbicides to use. It's actually native warm season grass in our area. It does grow well in moist, shady areas or partly sunny sites. Nimblewill, there are times when you want to use nimblewill, say if you have shady areas or where your dogs or kids play in the yard. And this photo on the left was taken from Nancy Lawson's Humane Gardener website on her blog. And then the right photo is Nancy Berlin. She's the Master Gardener Coordinator and my coworker. So she's been growing nimblewill. She also has Pilea, Juncus tenuis, violets, and Elephantopas because she doesn't want to mow this area. Horse nettle. The flowers are a food source for many pollinators, including bumblebees and carpenter bees. I found something really neat at University of Virginia's Blandy Experimental Farm. They found it to be a very important pollinator resource for short-tongued bumblebees, particularly in pastures or fields where it may be one of the only few abundant flowering pollen resources available. And I walked Manassas Battlefield on Monday, and I saw a couple of the horse nettle, so I took some photos. Fleabane, there's several species, and the name stands for early and then old man. If you perform a web search on Fleabane, a lot of articles come up with how you can kill it or eradicate it. It's an important source of nectar and pollen for pollinators. It's also an important host for the larvae of the lynx flower moth, and the crab spiders are frequently seen on the flower heads hunting for insects. The seeds are enjoyed by numerous bird species such as the American goldfinch, ground finches, and sparrows. And there's on the left photo, there's tiny pollinators on the spring flowers of the fleabane. And on the right, I believe that's the, I think that might be a crab spider on the flower. So next we'll talk about ragweed and goldenrod. So you want to blame ragweed, not goldenrod, for your allergies. Ragweed pollen, not goldenrod, is notorious for causing allergic reactions in humans. Ragweed can produce about 1 billion pollen seeds per season. And unfortunately, they share the same bloom time, which is mid to late August into early October. So how you tell the difference? Ragweed, the photo on the right, it has small flowers that produce small lightweight pollen that blows into the wind, and it's not showy for attracting pollinating insects. But on the left, you can see goldenrod has heavier and stickier pollen that has been well adapted for insect pollination. The bright flowers are quite attractive to numerous pollen gathering insects such as butterflies, wasps, bees, and beetles. And the photo on the left of the goldenrod, a little wasp is pollinating the goldenrod bloom. Next, we'll talk about moss, which many homeowners consider a nuisance or kind of a weed on their property. There's over 15,000 species of moss throughout the world. They are an important thing to have in the ecosystem. They do provide habitat for small mammals like mice, shrew, as well as salamanders, insects, arachnids, and microscopic invertebrates like the tardigrades, they're also known as water bears or moss piglets. And there's one picture on the right that's hanging out in moss. You can encourage moss in shady areas where your turf grass won't grow. And one of the benefits of having moss is you don't need to mow or fertilize it. Wild strawberry. It attracts sweat bees and small carpenter bees, and it supports conservation biological control, meaning that the wild strawberry plant attracts predatory or parasitoid insects that prey upon pest insects. And it's a larval host to the gray hair streak butterfly. Common yarrow, again, just like the wild strawberry, it supports biological conservation control, so it attracts predatory or parasitoid insects that prey upon pest insects. It attracts butterflies, bees, making it a nice addition to a pollinator garden. And it can become weedy, however, because it spreads readily and tolerates disturbance. Hyssop Leaf thoroughwort. It may look like a weed to some because it is found in meadows, old fields, disturbed habitats, and roadsides. It attracts wasps, bees, and other beneficial insects, including predators and parasites of the brown marmorated stink bug. So the next slides, these plants are beautiful and beneficial, but unfortunately named because they have weed in them, or the name weed in them. So there's common milkweed and butterfly weed. So there's actually over 100 species of milkweed in North America, and monarchs show preference to some milkweed species. And milkweed is the host plant for the monarch butterfly. So without milkweed, the larva would not be able to develop into a butterfly. So the photo on the left, that's a monarch larva or caterpillar, and they feed exclusively on milkweed leaves and nothing else. And it's amazing. There's over 450 insects that are known to feed on some portion of the milkweed plant. Flies, beetles, ants, bees, wasps, and other butterflies all on the flower at the same time. And the photo on the right, that is butterfly weed, not to be confused with butterfly bush. This is an herbaceous perennial native to the eastern U.S. And butterfly weed's a magnet for butterflies, other pollinators, and even hummingbirds. And I forgot to mention the adult large milkweed bug on the left. And this photo of the butterfly weed, I took this in my parents' backyard. Pennsylvania smartweed. Numerous species of flies, beetles, and bees pollinate this plant. It's an important source of food to many bird species, upland game birds, songbirds, and I think that one's really pretty too. Jewelweed, this attracts birds and hummingbirds, but also bees and butterflies. And it attracts the ruby-throated hummingbird and long-tongued bees, including bumblebees and honeybees. Pokeweed, it can get quite weedy, so like this photo shows, it's a hard decision whether to let it spread or not because it's pretty and the fruits feed 30 different bird species. It has wildlife value as the fruits eaten by robins, cedar waxwings, warblers, and mourning doves. And small mammals such as raccoons, opossums, foxes, and black bears will eat the berries. And it's also a host plant for the giant leopard moth. So here's a list of the resources I used for this PowerPoint presentation. It will be available on YouTube probably later this week or next week. And there's a lot of great information on different weeds for pollinators. So we do have an upcoming Wednesday class in July, our last one in July. The classes are free, but please register, and they're always from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The next one is July 14th, which is Ask a Master Gardener. So if you have questions about your lawn, peppers, if they're funny shape, or you have squash plants, they blossom, but there's no squash, we can help out. So you just want to make sure to register. And the online Zoom classes will resume in September. We also have some upcoming Saturday in the Garden classes at the Teaching Garden on Linton Hall Road. Again, these are free, but please register. And these are from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. So this Saturday, July 10th, how to grow and identify mushrooms. And then we have a Teaching Garden bed of the month, drought-tolerant bed. August 7th is cut flowers. September 4th is cover crops, hugel garden, fall and a fall plant sale. And October 2nd is permaculture and yoga.
Hi, Natalie. There's a couple questions for
Yep.
you.
Mm-hmm.
One question, what was the other pasture thistle and the other name of the thistle? It was bull thistle, wasn't it?
Let's see. So there's a lot of thistles native to North America, but these ones, the pasture thistle and field thistle, are native in Prince William County. Canada thistle and bull thistle are not. They're considered invasive and they're not native.
Okay, and Cher asks, is there any benefit to ragweed? Ragweed, you meant Cher, right? I see it in my garden.
That I don't know. I'd have to do more research about it. When I found information on ragweed, I didn't see anything about benefits to pollinators. There could be, but I'd have to look into that more.
No. I think that's it. Any more questions, anybody? I think that's it. Natalie, great job.
Thanks. And then lastly, do you have any questions for me? The turtle wants to know how many questions.
I think that's it.
So I just wanted to thank everyone for participating. You'll be receiving a survey shortly. So if you have the time, please take this survey to let us know how we're doing so we can improve upon future classes. And we do have a horticulture help desk. So if you need assistance about your lawn or plant care or identifying plants and weeds, you can call or email the horticulture help desk at 703-792-7747, and then the email's at the bottom as well.
Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you. Any other questions? Or
I don't see
this list of weeds is not all inclusive. I mean, there's probably lots of other ones that I didn't have the time to include on this, but does anyone know of any other weeds that they have in their lawn or property that you notice is beneficial to pollinators?
none for me.
No.
Okay. Hopefully we'll see people out at the teaching garden. Oh, Smartweed, okay to leave. I used to pull it out. That's from Harriet.
Yeah, I mean, like I said in the beginning, I wouldn't let it overtake like your whole property, but if you leave some here and there, I think that's okay.
Cher has one, another one. She says Osprey asks about, wait, I have to go back and find it. Buttercups.
Buttercups, I'm not sure about, but I could look into that.
And one about oxeye daisy have any benefit
Oxeye daisy.
to pollinators?
Mm,
That's another European.
yeah, I didn't look that one up, but I can look.
If nothing else, they have benefit to honeybees because honeybees are native to Europe.
Oh, interesting.
There's a lot of Queen's Anne's lace out
Yeah.
that have bees on them. Okay, I think that's it for me.
Alrighty.
Talk to you later, Natalie.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all. We'll see you next time.
Bye.